that are very far from their values. And we've approached the search for leaders completely from the bottom up. And the work started with a tour that Musi Marmani led for Bosa leaders to go around the country and look for the type of leadership that reflects the constitution that we spent so much time working on. And that constitution is driven by the ethos that we can once again live the values of Ubuntu in how we conduct ourselves as leaders, in how we engage with people in communities, and in the connection that we project when we get into positions of power. And that set of values has then unearthed a process which we call candidate selection. And that process has started slowly but has gathered steam over the last few weeks. And we've been able to meet some of the most talented leaders in provinces around this country. And we're privileged to have the opportunity to introduce them today. Before I introduce them, I want to honor the death of one of my father's best friends, Peter Jones. And the reason why I bring his name up is because as we reflected on the types of leaders that we would like, people like Peter Jones were in our mind. Community activists that want nothing, that sought not to get the limelight, that did not aim for possessions out of leadership, but were insistent on the fact that what they believed can be reflected in the spaces within which they lead. What they believed can be reflected in the connections that they make with leaders across the country. And slowly, one step after another, they were able to find like-minded individuals around the country. And what became the Black Consciousness Movement was one step at a time community engagement that led to this thing that we remember today. And so as we remember Peter Jones, I want all of our leaders to really think about that image of a selfless, values-based leader that takes an opportunity and consistently remembers people brought them there, and those same people have to be reflected in the things that they do. With that said, I want to start with the lady who is going to revolutionize our interaction with the people of Gauteng. Her name is Nozipho Mbata. We have convinced her to leave business, which was very successful for her, but really connected with her on her love for communities and how communities can use technology to overcome challenges that seem too big. And Nozipho is an innovative entrepreneur who understands building things from scratch. And what we're trying to do in Gauteng and in other provinces is to really be entrepreneurial about our approach to solving problems. So, Nozipho. Thank you, Nozipho. Welcome to the team. Next, I want to introduce the team member from the Eastern Cape, Ubut Makoba Buya, who is a person that is born in Grahamstown, has been brought up in student politics, understands the challenges of people on the ground in that part of the world, is an electrical engineer by training, has spent significant amount of time trying to figure out how to get youth enthused about politics again. And it's in the context of his passion for the youth that he joined the organization called AIM. And when AIM and Bosa got together and concluded our partnership, we then said to Butkusta, you need to give us this man, he's too good to be outside of our movement. So we're really proud that Mr. Bua can lead the Eastern Cape on behalf of Bosa. Please come. So next I want to introduce a gentleman called Ntokozo Biela, who is from KZN, son of the soil there, has come up through entrepreneurship and working with young minds in teaching them how to do mindset changes, to lead them in terms of what it takes to be a leader, and understand that leadership is not what you say, but what you do. Ntokozo has spent years in entrepreneurship working with young people, and his observation was that he could amplify his voice and scale his efforts in terms of engaging with these young people if he came into politics. So again, as a gentleman that we spent some time talking to about what the KZN community is looking for, and his beliefs were in sync with ours, and it is a pleasure to introduce him as our KZN leader. So as we traveled around the country, we've met with very interesting people. It's not just business people. We really have found somebody with an affinity for grassroots work in Mpumalanga. He had a very comfortable career in media and was doing well for himself, but was convinced that, like his parents, dedicating himself to working on the ground with young people is the only way that this country can be saved, and is the only way that a place like Mpumalanga, with so many problems, particularly in terms of developing opportunities for young people to work. So it was within that context that we started engaging with Vusi, and it became very clear to us early on in the engagement that we have a gentleman that lives our values, is a believer in the things that we'd like to do, and we then took the decision to ask Vusi to become the head of Mpumalanga for Bosa. This process didn't start today, obviously. Sis Nobuntu talked about our starting Bosa formally 145 days ago. But before that, Musi Maimane was engaged in this grassroots engagement with the country. And he was doing that in the form of an organization called OSA. And one of the stars of the journey of OSA is a gentleman by the name of Timothy Maluleke. And Tim has found a unique way of fusing his love for music, communicating, and grassroots work. And you'd find Tim much more comfortable in settings where he's signing up people on the bonnet of his car, and in townships where he believes that he could get people galvanized around being volunteers for Bosa. Him and his wife are a formidable team that have helped us establish a presence in Limpopo, which we think is going to stand us in good stead. Tim, welcome formally as the leader of Limpopo. As we carry on around the country, we have been privileged to meet people that are massive personalities in the communities that they come from. One such person is Mr. Big Boy Moagi, who has shown that communicating with people from a grassroots point of view allows you to earn their love earn their respect, and become a hero just in terms of their ability to project the person that they hope to be. Starting radio at a tender age of 18 years old, and becoming a spokesperson and a communicator in multiple roles, both local and provincial, but then later on as a spokesperson for minister in government. Big Boy has been the quintessential person that's able to take big issues and make them less complicated, take things that are high in the sky and make them relevant on the ground. And we hope that skill set is really going to connect with the people of Northwest and allow us to project a youthful but mature leadership style that epitomizes all of the leaders that I've just introduced. But I'm really, really thankful that we were able to get Big Boy Moari. Welcome. It is also an honor that from time to time colleagues emerge from one role as clear and consistent leaders in what they're doing and allow us to then say to ourselves, this person reflects the best of us and would like them to play a role in a particular community. And it is within that spirit that we were able to have that long engagement with Muzuli, who has come through the ranks at Bosa, is a trained lawyer, admitted as a member of the bar, and has been a very, very strong advocate for the type of politics which we believe South Africa needs, which is the issue of direct representation, where people from communities get to represent, get to pick leaders to represent what they want. And she has been strongly lobbying for the bill in Parliament which got passed to be modified. Despite the fact that we haven't received the results we wanted, we saw in Muzuli a huge, huge superstar in the making, and the Western Cape is going to embrace her as a provincial leader who is able to connect with that young population and show people that being better than the rest of the country isn't a benchmark. The benchmark is about equality, and it's about a future that's manifested for people that live in places like Khayelitsha, places like Gugulethu. And we are going to spend a lot of time supporting Muzuli in that enterprise, and we think that she's going to be a fantastic leader for the Western Cape. So Muzuli, without further ado, next, I want to introduce a leader that has been born to do what he's about to do now. Roger has spent his life in politics, but serving communities in different ways. As a pastor's son, he's felt compelled to bring a level of values-based leadership to politics. He has done that at all three levels of politics, serving local government, serving provincial government, and most recently as a chief of staff to a minister. Roger Solomon is one of those people that has a passion for the lives of people in the Northern Cape, who many a time feel like they're the forgotten people of the country. And what we wanted when we were looking for a leader in that region is somebody that has spent time working on the ground, has an understanding of the tangible frustrations that people have, and has a willingness to roll up his sleeves and get his hands dirty in terms of listening intently to what communities want and reflecting that in some of the policies and activities that Bosa undertakes. So it is without further ado that I introduce Roger Solomon as provincial leader. So we have undertaken this process in a very organic, non-rushed way. And in that same spirit, we felt that we still had a few conversations to have with our partners in Free State. And so we will not be announcing the leader from there. We are really focused on the issue of quality. As you can see, our leaders are young, have come from all walks of life, are not recycled people from different political parties, but are people that are focused on what they can bring to the table. And it is within that spirit that we form this team, and we ask your support in reminding them of the priorities of whichever province that you're in at the moment, and giving us the opportunity to really back them in their engagement with yourselves. Politics is about the family structure, the town halls, the community centers that you all engage in, and our ability to be invited into those spaces to put forward the issues that Musi is about to outline is really the lifeblood of what Bosa is trying to do. So without further ado, I would like to ask our spokesperson to come back. Thank you.
Thank you, Tumelo, for such an introduction of great leadership that South Africa has. And we believe in you, and we believe that you're going to take our country forward. And I see that our leader is already standing to come to the podium to give, to give his address. And I don't want to delay him, as some call him Pramusi, and we call him Party Leader Musi. Please come to the podium.
Sanbonani dumelang, goeiemiddag, molweni, macheroni, nda bagaetsho dumelang. No, it's okay, it's okay. We are fellow South Africans, you know. I always prefer to greet people, talk to people. It's also great to have in the room our national youth leader in Henry Lamini, who's sitting at the back there. Henry, how's it? How are you? Henry is busy making waves at universities across the country. He was in Stellenbosch last week, and then he was at UCT, and now he's fighting at Wits University. So he's not only good looking as former Mr. South Africa, but he's an absolute activist in the work that we do. But it's also good to have our team here from various parts, and it's nice to see Dorian and a couple of people who we've worked hard with over the last number of years. Colleagues who were with us in the National Assembly, and Stevens Mokhalapa, who sits on our board, and as we build an organization that takes this country forward. I today wanted to use this opportunity to lay out what Bosa and what we want to fight and work towards. And I've titled today that our nation awaits a reset. Because I think you don't have to be a rocket scientist to realize, like many South Africans, that our country is heading in the wrong direction. I think I want to send my deep condolences to the family of AKA, to the citizens who this morning, as I was coming here, heard in the news of a bus crash in Limpopo. Now, I am a person of faith, and sometimes these things, you've got to look at them both in the natural and the supernatural. And when you finish the words of our national anthem that says, Morena boloka setjhaba sa heso, you get reminded of times such as this one. And say, Amorena, aboloke setšhaba sa heso. Fedise dintwa le matshwenyeho. Our people are in trouble. 5 months ago, when we began this journey, all we wanted to do was to occupy the center of politics. By that, I wanted us to be clear that we wanted to create an alternative view for how South Africa must be. I knew, and many others know, that when you start afresh in politics, the journey is hard and it is long. But that cannot be an excuse to sit on the sidelines and say, I'm just going to observe from afar. It must be an excuse to all of us as South Africans to say, it's time we roll up our sleeves. We realize that we don't have South Africa B. We've only got one South Africa. And if we are going to have one South Africa, we need to make this one work. That's what in many ways drives us. And certainly makes me get up every day, that there are many South Africans who, like me, share the ideals of Nelson Mandela and what is enshrined in our constitution. Which is always the question I put forward, which is, surely if we share values, we share a common passion for this country, isn't it time that we work together to build a South Africa that works for all? We share a love for our nation. No, you can't help but feel, I travel this country and I've had the privilege to be in different corners, in different parts. And just to appreciate its beauty, appreciate her people, you realize that it's not gone are the days where we can sit down and say, Mar, that side of the boat is leaking. We must realize that perhaps we are all in the same boat. And that in truth, we've got to build together. But we're not just going to keep going for going on sake. It needs to be radical, it needs to be bold, and it needs to be immediate. I want to tell you a story, you know. I am a husband to one wife. I've always got to get that number right. And I'm a father to 2 girls and 1 boy. My eldest daughter has just turned 12. She's beautiful, and maybe one of the reasons I remain in politics is because I hope, you know, she can get security, because I can see the boys now starting to. But she, like many girls in this country, she goes to a public school. My kids are all. But it began, as I was preparing for today, it began to make me think about maybe a 15-year-old in this country. Picture her in your mind. A 15-year-old young girl. Let's, because Bosa, we believe in superstars, let's call her Naledi. See, Naledi's story is an interesting one in our country. Naledi is a young girl who in this country is born to a single mother, because statistics show us the fact that more than half the kids born in this country are born to single mothers, which maybe paints a picture of the state of our families. Naledi will one day want to go to school. She'll start, if she's lucky enough, to be one of the few that end up at an ECD center, and that's never guaranteed. While she lives in a democratic South Africa, she'll know that access to education has improved, but quality hasn't. And this is the bit that must anger all of us. That by the time Naledi hits grade 4, which coincidentally is the grade my son has just completed, she will join 82% of the young people in this country who cannot read for meaning. She can continue with school. But when she hits grade 9, she faces the prospect of either dropping out, as 40% of our students who started in this cohort of matriculants we celebrate, 40% of them dropped out. If she chooses to go to a TVET college, she's either one of the lucky 9% who make it through the program, or 89% who drop out of the program, or 91% who drop out of the program. Maybe, who knows? She may be one of the lucky ones who get to write the matric. I've certainly not been ever apologetic. It remains a crime in this country that we must ask any child to pass any subject at 30%. I would never go to a doctor who knows 30% of the work. I would never fly in a plane where the pilot only knew 30% of what flying is. Why are we asking our children and anyone's child to pass at 30%? You see, it's a smart way of hiding the deficiencies in our education system when we pat ourselves on the back and say 81% of our children passed. But it's 81% of the kids who actually sat for the exam, of which only less than a third would have written that and got a bachelor's pass rate, and the majority of those would have got what is typically a senior certificate, which means that 3 of their subjects were passed at 30 and the other at 40. We are telling Naledi that yours is about ending up in the lines of the unemployed. We are educating her for an economy that has long gone, and we are reminding her of what the promise of apartheid was, which is that townships will become dormitories for the unemployed. In due course, she'll join the 17 million South Africans who what is called NEETs, or typically they are not in training, they are not in education or in employment. It's true. For her, life is getting hard. You know, I went into a restaurant 2 weeks ago. Ndatomung came to me and said to me, "Mr. Maimane, I don't know what you want me to do. I just bought a braai pack. And because of load shedding, that braai pack has gone off." In a country where things are getting expensive, and yet things cannot keep because load shedding, tells you of a country that's not heading in the direction we want. But here's what's difficult, is that 15-year-old Naledi has never had a year in her life where she does not know load shedding. The truth is, she knows this saying all too well, that at the end of the money, there's still more month left. She fears that maybe if she gets sick, she'll end up at a clinic down the road and the doctor may not be there. But maybe her greatest fear, I was having this actual conversation with my daughter. I said to her, you know, when I was growing up, my father would give us some money and say, "Musitsamao rekela something da. Why it's about Bogotopsenville, we know." And I would run in maybe what is a little bit more than a kilometer and a bit to go buy whatever, whether it was bread or milk, and run back. So I asked my daughter, because I did the same thing, and there are shops down the road from our house. So I say to her, "Can I send you to the shops to just go buy something nyana?" She must just run and go get something. She says 2 things to me. She says, "I'm not scared of the traffic. I'm not scared that I'll get lost. I know the way. I'm not even scared of the people. But I'm scared of the men that I see loitering around our streets because I, like many girls, fear being violated by another man. See, it's tempting and easy to use statistics to talk about gender-based violence. But when it arrives inside your house and you realize that this is a fear your girl will grow up with, you have to concede. It's abnormal. You have to concede that we are, as a country, need to do better and we need to bring about change. At the same time as this dichotomy, I'm part of a generation who can remember, not so long ago, that this country was in fact working. I'm part of the post-1994 generation who saw a time where our country was growing at 5%. Who can remember a time actually when leaders, at least in the office of president, were respected. In the periods of 2000 to 2008, this government was building more houses than there were shacks. It gave us a degree upon which that our dividend for freedom would pay off. So it's not that it's impossible. It's that along the way we decided to do an off-ramp and take a different journey. We have, as a nation, needing to realize we need a radical reset. For Naledi and so many others, we need to tell her about a new country. We need to show her that it's possible to build a South Africa where millions can prosper. That's our mission. For each one of these provincial leaders, for members on our board, deputy leaders, it does not matter, even our chairperson, Kusta Jack, would know it, that the mission of Build One South Africa is to say to people, let us build this country upon which black, white, Indian or colored can prosper together in our nation and live peacefully next to one another. It is what organizes me. It is what built, when we say one, it's out of that premise that the prospects of a child in Stellenbosch ought not to be different to the prospects of a child from Soweto. That they both must know that they will prosper together in this country. So I do believe that 2024 will be watershed. It'll be a moment in our country. And I know it will be as significant as 1994 was. We have to use the moment that 1994 produces to build a new government. Now, I know you might be worried about that. I know people at home are sitting going, hey, we have seen what happens with coalitions. We've seen all the chaos. Let me give you these words. It's why Build One South Africa is here. We want to anchor that vision for this government that will take this country forward. And I want to say, we do so anchored on our values of Ubuntu. You see, Ubuntu reaffirms the idea that I see that you're a fellow human being. Muthu ke muthu ka batho. Imagine if this country owned the value of Ubuntu. Suddenly, if you're a man, you would never lift your hand against a woman. Suddenly, if you think I must be racist to another person, you would realize that the interconnectedness you have with that person does not permit you to see a person less because of the color of their skin. You would know that to steal public resources is not just about self-enrichment, but it is taking away from the child who today may not in fact have a mask during a time of COVID. Or ultimately, if they go to a hospital, that the doctor is not going to be there because the government has run out of money and money was stolen. I always say to people that the lack of Ubuntu is like a father who sits through a glass window and sits on the other side eating KFC and then comes inside the house having wiped their mouth and sit with their children and say, hey, we are all hungry. What can we do? It's a different form of politics of the stomach. It's actually politics that harms human beings. That's what corruption does. It violates the very essence of Ubuntu. So given that, given our value of Ubuntu, we have to build a model that demonstrates that our vision will realize the protection of that value of Ubuntu. It's the idea of upholding dignity. It's about making sure that our vision, which is built on what I would like to call radical centrism. It's a growing phenomenon all over the world. People are looking around and saying, we are tired of old archaic models. Let's build something that sits in the middle that radically transforms economies. I'm inspired by works of people like Ha-Yung Chang and so many others who are beginning to write into this space. In literature written by Rawlings on donut economics that says people must pursue at the center of it a sense of life and dignity. These are different economics. These are economics that reject the false morality, that there's a sense of us versus them, or left versus right, or rich versus poor, or tribe versus tribe. The project of apartheid was predicated on a few elite governing for their self-benefit. What we have to do is reject that. As we rejected it then, we must make sure today we have an economy that works for everybody. You see, to me, when you start to create a small clique of an elite, is no different to that project, neither is it different to the idea of what populists do, who often other people and ultimately seek to divide rather than unite. At Build South Africa, at Build One South Africa, we believe that there's only one conscious moral choice, is to create a future upon which all South Africans, regardless of race, creed or wealth, deserve a competent, honest government that offers a realistic hope. Only when all of us, as South Africans, sorry, I got to put this up here so I can read it better. Because only when all of us as South Africans are free to use the resources to create wealth for others and to reward those who create value for them, can we actually share in that tomorrow. We need to build genuine solutions. And maybe the ism we've got to look for is how do we become a sense of realism and introduce a pragmatism that ensures that we deliver for all the people. Fellow South Africans, radical centrism recognizes the power of the market. It also adopts the policies that promote property rights and free enterprise. It's a belief that says that on the premise of the economics is not a zero-sum game with winners and losers, but the free economy raises the general prosperity of its participants. It reduces poverty, and we can have a state that ensures that it looks after the vulnerable. It's about, in many ways, expanding the middle class. Ask me what I want to do. That's what I want to do for this country, is to move poor people to the middle class. So if we build a big middle class, you create a stable society. I like the new theme, let no one be left behind. It is indeed to ensure that that happens. It is to ensure that we are free in principle, but that no matter the material circumstances, everyone is free to exercise the choices to improve their lives. It rejects traditional ideological divisions and views compromise as a productive manner to ensure that we can prosper. We hold that true value that says an individual has rights and freedoms, but it's balanced with a powerful sense of Ubuntu that knits society together despite individual differences. It's why I'm so passionate about even families. I think families help kids learn values. It helps, I don't give, I haven't spoken much about my wife, but my wife really, she's a history teacher, so, but she, is crucial in the beginning. When I remember when she does the pajama parade, mothers will know what that is. But the gift I give is to make sure she's a happy mother, and to make sure that as my kids observe how I treat her, my son will learn how one day he has to treat women. I think as men we need to stand up and be counted. Counted in our homes, counted in our communities. If I can be an ally to women who are fighting this battle, I will put up my hand first. Because no amount of excusing or anything or teaching will help. It's about us standing up as men and saying this is a war we must be a part of. Radical centrism understands that we're committed to free thought, to free speech, and a free exercise of faith. We're under no illusions that it will take this country some time to rebuild. But we have to eradicate corruption. We have to be more diligent. We have to apply the most competent people and bring on fresh leadership. That's why I'm so grateful. And I hear Muzuli, who has been leading our candidate recruitment program, that so far, heading towards 2024, already over 500 people have started to apply to be candidates in the National Assembly and in provincial legislatures. So I want to share what we derive from radical centrism to say, how do we build a country that works together? Number one, I think the vision always is about putting a job in every home. And we do that by immediately creating a township special economic zones. Casinomics are growing. People want to prosper. They don't just want grants, they want to work. And they are working. One of the works that I've been doing in the last number of years is being able to identify through equity how we can fund businesses. They are there and we've got to help them. We've got to put money before them and ensure that we can fund this exercise that gives them equity and grow in their community so that they can create new jobs and wealth for citizens. Big business is not going to do this. It's micro-enterprise that sits all across the country that employs more people. So to do this, we need a vibrant private sector in cities, in townships, in rural communities to create a vigorous economy that grows, that's supported by a public sector that ensures that young people can find work, that employs the best who have a passion to deliver excellent services to the people of this country. And I know that when we meet with people in government, we will lobby them more for this. Because we want young people to also enroll in a variety of community-based services. When a bridge, a road, a infrastructure has been built in the community, go to the community, find the people in the community, let them work in that project so that we can put a job in every home. Fellow South Africans, we have to be realistic about this issue. As minimum, even as a payment gap of even 100 rands per day ensures that over a period of time, no South African will be left without food that night. It's about the dignity of earning an income rather than the images we see here in Gauteng or all over. If you drive to a builder's warehouse right now and pull your car, there are plumbers, there are welders, there are pool repair people, they are sitting on the side. Tell me, where is the dignity in that man who has to race after a bakkie in the hope that that day they'll be able to find that peace job for the day? That violates Ubuntu, and it tells of the fact that we've got to do better about ensuring that our people can find work. We'll work with the private sector to ensure that more people are employed, and to this extent, we want to introduce a tax holiday for anyone who employs people that come out of TVET colleges. You see, in the TVET colleges, you do vocational training. Let's allow the people to get a tax holiday. Because that will stimulate the throughput and ensure that those young people at the end of it can find a job. You know, I've read through all the codes of triple BEE, etc. But the one thing that's missing is where are the big points being given for people to create work for people? We will introduce a national civilian service that ensures that young people can transition well from school to university. Yeah. The more we do these, the more we restore dignity and the more we ensure that our young people can find work and able to stand up and say, I did something today. You know, along with building one South Africa, I hate one thing. I hate poverty. Poverty is the unspoken thing in our country. And when more than half of our citizens are living below the upper poverty line, it must tell you that we have many South Africans. And the job we've got to do is make sure we intervene deliberately. Science, technology, economics, accounting, and maths. I want to make sure young people have got critical skills. I know Bago Twitter fight with me all the time to say, Musi, why are you against LO? I'm against LO because it doesn't help our young people get critical thinking when it matters. Let's incentivize in the STEAM subject so that young people can pass at an average of C. That will give us a better picture of what our education system looks like. You see, if you pass at the current rate at the moment, you are not even going to use those points to go to university because universities can't accept people who are passing at 30% and 40%. Let's incentivize our young people. And I want to affirm that we're going to do this by placing parents at the center of the education. Now I'm telling you now, our fight for education is about giving vouchers to parents so that they can choose which is their best school. You see, when the school feels the pressure that there's competition, when they know that I can choose where I can go. I grew up with Opsi. The school down the road from my parents' house is not functional. It's there. So what happens in most townships is that all you have to do is stand outside at 6 o'clock in the morning and see children being ferried to compete for spaces in ex-Model C schools. I want to introduce private public schools with charter schools in townships so that people can use their vouchers and the quality of education, particularly in our township communities, improve. Because you know what the benefit of that is? It means kids are not trekking all day from one suburb to the next, but they are living in their communities so that education is fulfilled. We must pay our teachers better, especially those who compete and do well. If we don't fix this, if we don't fix education, this will peril our economy for generations to come. Because we're all competing for skills. We want the best skilled young people to be filling jobs in our education, in our employment sector. I support maybe in part when the president says we must remove all the bureaucracy for people to apply for jobs, these stupid forms that the government puts up. When I speak to young people, why are you not working? Form, submit, Z23. Oh, when? Get the formula, the form. But they transition into nothing. Ultimately, we want to introduce an entrepreneurship grant for deserving matriculants and graduates who want to start their own businesses. Let them do that. Let's give them an incentive. Our young people are entrepreneurial. I've seen them. I've seen them. They are innovative. Bazaar. Thirdly, this is going to be uncomfortable because people must be nervous when a Bosa government comes in power. We must punish. We must punish corruption and return billions back to South Africans. Corruption has now become the order of the day in all sectors, by the way. Not just in public service, but also in private sector. I see people, nowadays, I got stopped by the police on my way here. I'm so confident that I was pulling out my driver's license in J&J. But other people stopped by the police, they feel they must remove le paselinyana. What nonsense is that? We are losing ourselves when the transactions must involve some form of inflation because we have to pay bribes. Now I hear people are bribing people for their kids to get spaces in schools. Soon you'll be bribing somebody to move you to the front of the line, go home affairs. So what country is that when everything that you do must get an additional penalty that you pay through corruption? The Auditor General can't keep making reports that get ignored. People are privatizing. Instead of working for government, they've privatized services of government. That's why the system is always down. You ask, why is the system down? Hey, no, sawara, bro, something yana. It will go up. Or you will go up. Listen, I'm not saying all civil servants are corrupt. I want the best to work for government. But the ones who are corrupt, Bone, I nearly used the word, we must deal with them properly. No, we must. And especially for corrupt politicians, we must jail them, we must prosecute them. And to this effect, we want to introduce specialized corruption courts that make sure we can process this thing. Zondo finishes his work, still today, no prosecution. Let's deal with it. Just to make matters even more uncomfortable, I'll even say to all our provincial leaders, if you end up ever in government, you are going to have to be exposed to routine and ongoing forensic lifestyle audits to ensure that nobody is driving a luxury car, owns a big mansion, hides money offshore that they have not legitimately earned. Don't say I didn't tell you. But I think someone reflected earlier to say in idea number 4, let's equip communities to take charge of their police stations. We have a national police minister and a national police service, but it doesn't work. Let's bring policing to local. Let communities be involved with their police stations. Let's get community volunteers. Let's make sure people can find accountability in communities by making sure the station commander is elected by the community. See, when you know who the station commander is and they're elected, now they know or they don't just work for the Minister of Police, they work for the community. It's sad today that we live in a South Africa where there are more private security guards than there are policemen. Nowadays, people only go to the police station to report, to say, I need to claim for insurance or certify. Private sector, in partnership with localized communities, we can introduce more functioning forensic services, laboratories, databases, so that the criminal justice system is not delayed. Fellow South Africans, we must ensure that the police are held up to particular standards. And lastly, I want to introduce a specialized investigative and prosecutorial team whose sole focus is to hunt down, apprehend, and convict a list of the nation's 100 most wanted violent criminals. Number 5, let's get in the best people to fix South Africa. Now, I met with the Public Service Commission to work with this idea. But where there's infrastructure that needs to be built, let's get the best people. Let's make sure people who will partner with will be responsible for capital raising, for building and maintenance of infrastructure, to the standards that government in fact agrees to and upholds. Number 6, and this is for me something that's crucial. We have to provide more direct healthcare, housing, and income to help the poor. You see, if we can ensure that every family has a sense of healthcare across all sectors, and we can maximize the assets that exist in the private sector and the public sector, why should somebody only be exclusively designed to only go to one sector? It breeds a new sense of division. If I, with a medical aid, feel I will get the best health care at a public hospital, I must go to that public hospital and pay at that public hospital. But in the same vein, I know there are citizens in communities, who, if they need to go to a private doctor because that's accessible, let the state be the underwriter of that transaction. And so we want to introduce a choice of a low-fee medical scheme for providers so that they can see doctors of their choice and be able to exercise the rights. Why should poor people not be able to exercise rights? You give people a voucher for them to build a house, they will build a house as their choice. Why should I tell you, our DP house looks like this, you must build it like that? Empower people. Dignity. You know, tata ben pai Eastern Cape tata watu ansio nyoka. Atu choranjan kauta usio nyoka. Ati. And I'm going to use English because it's closer. Uti, I'm not going to live in a hole I did not build. Empower people. Redirect the state housing budget so that people are empowered. When people are in the middle class and the upper class, they go to the bank and they get money and they decide what house they want. Why should that choice not be available for the poor? Give the people the power. And as we eradicate issues like corruption, etc., and provide a basic healthcare provision and housing, we can directly engage poor South Africans. I'm really coming towards the end. Number 7 is we've got to provide free Wi-Fi. Data has become a human right. When you are not, if we want to introduce a new apartheid, it must be an apartheid where others have access to data and others don't. Cost of data is expensive. Let's make it free for people. Let's ensure that people are able to get in. Because when you signal that, you demonstrate that you want to be an economy that doesn't only reflect the 4th Industrial Revolution, but truthfully enters into a world where the Internet of Things are working. You will never be able to pilot driverless cars in this country because data provision is not always certain. We must amend our laws so that we get to the future. Quickly. People are talking AI. That shouldn't be for some, it should be for everybody. That we benefit from artificial intelligence and the uses of its services. I was going to say that sometimes people turn around and they say, you know, I was in this conference in in so many years ago. But that person today wants to tell us about the metaverse and crypto. Morogoro. This. Morogoro. Number 8 is about the subject of empowerment. I want to introduce empowerment policies that in fact help poor people to get into the middle class. Not this empowerment policy that creates billionaires or a few people. But let's get more people empowered. I have no problem with billionaires, by the way. I just want for more people to participate in the economy. So if you create new employment, if you maintain employment, if you give tax payment and you give export contributions, you finance public work schemes, school vouchers and university grants, you are fully participating in the empowerment of our society. And what I'm going to establish is to ensure that we have a jobs and justice venture capital fund. And people who contribute to that fund so that we can fund these businesses, fund these programs, so that we democratize access to capital and more citizens can participate in our economy. I've left perhaps maybe the last two as something that we should all worry about. Number 9, we must end load shedding. And to this effect, we are proposing that South Africa gets 4,000 megawatts to 5,000 megawatts nuclear power stations that can be built in the next number of years. This way we can ensure that there's an acceleration and stability. Now I know many people might say, what are SMRs or small modular reactors? This technology already exists, it's environmentally friendly, and it ensures that ultimately we can stabilize the grid over a period of time. The company I've engaged to this regard have informed me that these things can take between 2 to 5 years to build. And so if we stabilize and put communities in SMRs and use technology that allows for communities to benefit from that, we could truly end load shedding. And then we diversify our energy mix so that over a period of time, we're environmentally sustainable. Last, we are continuing the fight against this electoral act. We want an electoral act that locates people back into their communities, that leaders are elected from their communities, that our partnership under Bosa is to ensure that somebody who says, I stand as a Bosa representative, actually represents the community. We don't want professional politicians, the ones on whose jacket they fight. We want people who stand for their communities. Fellow South Africans, I hope in some ways the 10 ideas may not all be perfect, but as Sis Nobuntu has told you, Guti, we are engaged in a listening tour to go to communities and continue to speak to them about how we can improve things. None of them require constitutional change. They actually require us that when we come to Parliament, we pass laws that can work with us. And from here, in the next number of months, we'll be unpacking each of these ideas, talking to people, hearing subject matter experts, so that when we eventually produce the policy document, which is towards the second half of the year, we can ensure that it produces the shared knowledge and expertise of the people of this country. Fellow South Africans, coalitions are never easy. They're hard. But I say, come 2024, do not fear the idea of coalitions. So long as coalitions work with a plan. And these ideas is what we are going to fight for, to make sure we can bring people to coalesce for a future that works. Don't coalesce because you just want a position to be mayor, even though you might have 3 seats. Don't coalesce there. Rather build. And I truly believe we can do it. So I close and say, let's dare never forget Naledi. Let's dare never forget this young girl. Because to me, she could be the next superstar. Why should stop her from not being the next Tuso who performs on the international scene? What's to stop her from being the next scientist who's able to manufacture vaccines back here at home? What's to stop her from being an incredible teacher so that in our STEAM subjects young people can go? We have to fight harder for Naledi. We have to build a future for her. This is about the next generation, not about you and I. You know, I come from a home where my mother was a cashier and my father was a factory worker. All they wanted was a better life for their children. And I'm here to affirm that like them and like so many who are in this room, all we want is a better future for our kids. Because truly the South African dream must be one that if we work hard enough, the next generation will be better. I worked on coalitions. I know what it's like to be inside the DA, to work with ANC, all of the above. But I know we can build something. I know this country needs it. And I'm grateful that we can work with citizens who share our values, who have a vision for this country, and who truly believe when we put these ideas together, we can truly achieve a nation that's great. I really look forward to seeing you in different parts of the world. We go this weekend to the Northwest, there where there will be a fantastic launch there of the province. As we grow across the country, truly we are amassing South Africans who share this vision that maybe it is time to focus on nothing else but the future of this country and build one South Africa that works. God bless you.
Thank you, Musi. But very profound, and with our 10 ideas being made public, I will take this opportunity to the members of the media that we have. If there are any questions that would like to ask the leadership, your time is now. And I would like, when we do that, first introduce yourself and the title that you or the media house that you're coming from. Yes.
All right, thank you. Am I audible? All right, thank you very much. My name is Sisanda Alutambolekwa, political reporter at the Sunday Times. I think my question is, we all know that South Africa is headed towards an imminent reality of a coalition government at national level. And I think you've spoken greatly to this, but we'd just like to find out, are there specific political parties that you are hell-bent on not associating with or not working with? And are there any parties that you think you would be inclined to working with should the opportunity present itself? Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's more, I can take more at the same time. Maybe that probably is.
Good afternoon. My name is Noma Zimangosi from the Sowetan. Sisanda has already asked one of the questions. I also, it's just actually a comment from Twitter. Someone wanted to ask about what is your position or Bosa's position on the topic of foreigners in South Africa, and there seems to be the perception that it's not new that they are taking over what would be considered South Africans' job. You've got operations such as Operation Dudula, Put South Africa First, that are gaining prominence. So people actually, I just thought it was an interesting topic.
Sure.
What is your view towards that? And also just on the coalition topic, I know when we put this to other parties, they keep talking about they work with political parties who are sort of aligned with them in one way or another. But as we've seen in Gauteng, as we've seen in Nelson Mandela Bay, if there is nothing legally binding you from staying with the coalition partner you're in, we can have 4 mayors in 1 year.
Yeah.
So what is there, do you think that they should be legislated, and should there be something legal that also binds you? And then also, just another question, there was a proposal that had came from the DA which was viewed as trying to basically, I suppose, remove smaller parties from the playing field, in terms of saying that I think they need to have reach a certain threshold in order to be in government. And I just wanted, because you are a new party and you would be, I suppose, considered a smaller party, depending on how much votes you get anyways. So what would be your reaction to that proposal?
Let me respond to those. I think broadly there are questions about coalitions and how coalitions must work. Firstly, I reject the idea of a threshold. I think the reason, funny enough, the same DA fought against it in 1994. Because there was a proposal even in 94 to say the threshold needed to be set at a particular level. And had that been the case, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the DA then got 1.7%, would have in fact never qualified. That's the first. Now today, they are where they are. So the moment you introduce a threshold, you also discard a view that citizens might hold. You can't on one breath say you are pro-communities, pro their voice, and then another say, well, if your voice doesn't hit this threshold, no, it doesn't work. You must give those citizens the right to do that. When we adopted a proportional representative system, and which come 2024 will also have, hopefully, a mixture of some directly elected people, those people must have a voice. I may not agree with it, but they must have a voice. And that view must be considered. Otherwise, you marginalize citizens. That they must be governed better is no debate. Now, when I worked in 2016 and put together, there were just certain things, and you'll recall, Johannesburg had a mayor all the way throughout that period, however difficult it was until Herman Mashaba left. What were the things we did that helped? We did have that binding agreement. It was signed by all the leaders. But it was led. I needed to work with the leaders. You know, I got the best advice from the Dutch Prime Minister, who said to me, the first thing you've got to do is always make sure that you meet with your coalition partners regularly, even though there's nothing to talk about. Today, coalitions feel like people are talking to each other via the media. They are issuing press statements. So that's the first thing. I think we must be clear about regular engagements. It should have been by now that there should be regular press conferences from coalition partners that tell you what government has done and not done. But instead, we get exposed to this thing where, well, this one decides they've had enough, they release a statement, etc., etc. The third issue is that I think we've got to free the administration from being captured by the coalition. And that's why I speak about the Public Service Commission strengthening the bureaucracy so that even though you might have 3 or 4 mayors, but the city manager of Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni Otswane, mustn't feel like they must be aligned to whatever the faction of the day is. Otherwise, you destabilize the delivery of service delivery. Now, to the question you place, who do you work with, who do you not? I've tabled a plan. It's not just values. It's not just manifesto talk. Are you going to get us with a plan or not? Because if we don't arrive at that plan, then what ends up happening is that we must haggle over positions. And if you look at what's changing, let me give you a sad example. I'm listening to an MMC speak the other day. They asked them, you are MMC for transport, what are you going to do? Their response is, no, I don't know where the toilets in this place are, I don't even know where the office is. I'm like, but didn't you have a plan at the start of government what you would do for transport? If you in fact had a plan, then it doesn't matter in some ways who comes in as the MMC or whatever. That person must effect the plan so that citizens are not the last. Lastly, there are a couple of principles. I was at a coalition workshop on Monday. We had a long discussion about this issue. Because I wanted to put some principles on the table. We must have a common understanding of problems, have a plan, but also a suggestion has been made, which I support, that coalition meetings can also take place in public. You avoid these backdoor deals. You sit publicly so that citizens know what's going on. So to the 2024 project, it would be amiss of me to select upfront the parties and say, Bale, Kibale, Lebale, Lebale, and this one. No, you can't do that. Because one, the electoral results must be determined. And two, we must know upfront that we will execute the plan. To me, that's fundamental. When we finish with the Electoral Act, I hope one day we'll even get a president who's directly elected. So that we stop this manga business that we all sit at home and watch Nazarek and we go, ooh, I hope they choose the right one. They must choose the right one for themselves. We will choose the president of the country. So we have to get to that plan. That's why I'm deliberate about the plan. So I wanted to table it now so that anyone who talks to me and say, Musi, can we form coalition on 1, 2, 3, and 4, they must know we coalesce around a plan, building one South Africa. Otherwise, it's nice to be in a position, you might even get nice security, but what's the point if you've got no plan to deliver? Let me park it there. The issue of immigrants. No, immigration is a global issue. and I want to say this, legal immigration is good for any country. There are South Africans living in Australia. There are South Africans living in London. They have done so legally. They have to go through the process of making sure they get visas that are adjudicated. There are people who are going to live in our country. They must do so legally. They must go through a process where visas are allocated. And we must ensure that there's legal certainty for everybody in the country. But immigration itself and dealing with the issue is because actually much of it deals with the neighboring countries around us. We have to go to places like Zimbabwe, Eswatini, and deal with the leadership that is there. People actually want to stay at home, believe you me. They want to stay at home. But because you've got all of these dictators and some people, what Emerson Mnangagwa is doing in Zimbabwe should not be allowed. And South Africa's silence is supporting dictatorship there. So we must go there and deal with those issues so that Zimbabweans know if they want to stay at home, they can. But if they want to come to South Africa, they must do so legally. And that's about ensuring that anyone who enters the country has got the appropriate documents, they are given legal certainty, because what you do is you introduce what is called a secular flow of immigration. Which means somebody can come here, they can do what they feel, they abide with the laws of the country, and if they want to go back home, they go back home. The reason why you've got illegal immigration that's taking place is because there's a dysfunctional home affairs. Aaron Mutwaledi goes proudly and tells people, no, we've got so many offices that deal with immigrants in this country. There are few. If you are a South African and you are trying to go get an ID yourself, you see how long the line is. Now tell me, how does an immigrant achieve legal status in this country? But if we can give people legal status, it means if an immigrant commits a crime, they must be dealt with in the same way as a South African does the same. Because now you've given people certainty. Means they can contribute to tax in this country. Means they can operate in this country. And it means that you discount and remove issues when people say to me, but immigrants are taking our houses. How did they end up on the housing list? How did that happen? The issue here is about legality. It's about legal certainty and making sure that we are effective at managing immigration. That's about how effective our border management is, etc. So that people don't feel, you know, if you speak to immigrants, they will tell you, if you have to cross a river to get into this country and no one gives you legal certainty, you become scared to go home because you don't know if the next time you try to come back to a job, to whatever, you are going to be as lucky as the previous time. Immigrants lose their rights. There are people who are in this country teaching in our university and teaching in our schools because we don't have enough maths and science teachers. But because of this whole issue, when an immigrant walks out of a normal paying jobs legally here, they get robbed sometimes even by the police. And once they are robbed by the police, they have no rights. We must, when we attend to the issue of immigration, deal with it sensibly and legally, because when it's said and done, we are fellow Africans. And yes, I'm not sitting here. If I want to go to Zimbabwe, I must apply, and they will meet me at the airport. They will decide whether I'm welcome in their country or not. If I want to go to Zambia, they will do the same. I'm traveling in Africa. And these issues, I go to all the various countries. They have a process. If I need a visa, I apply for one. But you can't on one breath have the Africa Free Trade Agreement and on another breath say, actually, we don't want these countries, we don't want those countries. No. Can't speak with split tongues. Make sure there's legality. Let's adjudicate visas quickly. And let's make sure that when somebody is an immigrant, whether they came from here or England or America, they do so legally.
Thank you, Lucy. Any other questions? follow-up?
Not necessarily a follow-up, but just a quick one. We just wanted to find out, we saw from your tweets this week that Bosa attempted to launch a student chapter at WITS, and you've alleged on Twitter that you've been blocked from doing so. So we just wanted to understand the process of launching a student chapter prior to having announced provincial leaders and a 10-point policy plan. Yeah, I think that's my question. And is there any progress on the appeal to launch the student chapter?
This is an important fight. There is no precondition that says you must have launched provincial leaders or policy plan to be a society in a university. The precondition is you best be a registered political party, which we are. We have a young builders movement led by Henry there, who went through the normal channels to apply. The letter that they sent us, to me, was insufficient to explain why. So Nobuntu has been engaging the university. I'm a VETS graduate, so you must understand how personal this issue is. It hurts me that the university I was a part of doesn't want to allow young builders, citizens who actually want to build on a non-racial South Africa, a South Africa that works for all, now are being barred from being participants in that university. How many other young people in that university want to? So we've reached out to the Chancellor and the Dean of Students to demand a proper explanation and want those students to be registered. Because it happens this week when most students are on campus. It's unfair. Why? Let's get people to be registered. I want to be as legitimate a society at WITS as possible. They didn't even give us a process to say, correct this, correct that, to show that actually they're interested in you becoming a member there. Instead, they just said, no, it's been rejected, full stop. On what basis? So I am afraid this one we are serious about, and we are going to fight it because other universities have registered us. So I think Stellenbosch, UCT, we are moving. Why has WITS got particular criteria? Nobuntu has been engaging with the Dean of Students. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, so we've been engaging with WITS, and we know that our engagements are going to the Office of the Dean of Students. As Musi is saying, it's important that our young people are represented there. Our programs are very clear. So we submitted an application that's very clear in terms of what the program is, what the benefit is to young people and to the students. What we have back is not an outline that's very clear in terms of why we're being rejected. But we are engaging with them. We continue to engage with them because it's the rights of students to be able to engage in university on issues of civic development, on issues of leadership, and on the issues and social issues that our Young Builders movement engages on all the campuses that we've mentioned that we've already been registered in.
Thank you, Nobuntu. Yeah, thanks everybody. As we head towards closure, please be advised that our top ideas will be published on our website and will be shared on our social media platforms, Build One SA, and any direct engagements that you would want to have with us can be channeled through me for a one-on-one session with Musi or with the leadership of Bosa. I'm available on my details will be shared with the members of the media. And thank you everyone for making time to come today, and can get a round of applause. Thank you. Just last one before I let you go. Can I ask the provincial leaders all to come in front for a group photo with the leadership, the official photo with the leadership? And can I get help in perhaps moving some of the furniture so that we can line the picture correctly?
Let me also thank the team here, the stream here. I'm so grateful for the work that you are doing. You will hear more from here. This is where we
Let me first start by thanking Zbu, our comms director, together with the background staff. Simone, Simiso, thank you very much for the work that you've done here. Let me also thank the members of the media. Thank you for being here and gracing our event, because of it is only through you that we communicate to the public. And as a community-based and a grassroots organization, it's very important that the public understand what we are about. Let me also acknowledge and thank the leadership. I think you'd agree with me that we've got a future potential education president. So let me acknowledge the leadership. Thank you very much, CEO Rumelo. Thank you very much, our deputy leader. And indeed, thank you very much, Musi, our leader. Let me also thank and acknowledge the 8 provincial leaders that are here. I think the task at hand is quite heavy on your shoulders, but you have been carefully chosen, and we know that you will be up to the task. So from now on is to hit the ground running. Let me also acknowledge our background staff in Given and Tate Jerry. Thank you very much for the work that you are doing. Because of it is through you that we can be able to mobilize the ground. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We've given you our 10 big ideas. It is not Einstein or rocket science. We can amplify and work on it, but we are working from a bottom-up approach. So we will be going for further listening sessions so that we can engage with the general public. So we thank you for your inputs and for your feedback. The 10 big ideas, it is our precursor in terms of what we see as alternatives to South African solutions and South African challenges. So we've also introduced to you our provincial leaders. We would want you to work with them and ensure that we build from the community bottom up. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, to the funders and the donors that are here, to the civic movement and the civic organizations that are here. We are